Are you thinking of starting a new ERG? If you are, congrats and well done, right? Well done for lifting your head above the parapet. But it's not easy. How do you actually do it? How do you kind of get the thing off the ground? And perhaps most importantly, how do you get leaders bought into it so that you get the permission actually to do this thing? Well, that's what we're going to get into in today's video. So this is ERG Strategy, the channel that gives you tips, tools, strategy advice to build effective, engaged employee resource groups that actually make a difference. New videos every Tuesday and also on Friday mornings at 8:30 UK time. I go live on LinkedIn and here on YouTube also. So let's get into this. I now know quite a few people that have started networks. Some of them, they started them in 2020 post George Floyd. Some of them have started since then. There are organizations, even though it's something like over 90% of organizations in the US over a certain size have networks, and that number is growing in the UK. There are lots of organizations, especially in the UK and other regions, that still do not have networks. And so, there are still people that are sitting in companies thinking, oh, I feel like we should do something. I feel like I should get a group of, colleagues together that maybe want to just change things up a little bit. How do I go about doing that and how do I get support for it? And so that's what this video is about. And as I say, if that is you, then first of all, I doff my cap, right? Hats off to you for putting your head above the parapet, especially at a time like this when the political headwinds are there. There's somebody that I know, an incredibly brilliant individual who in his organization, he started a men's network and he got some serious backlash, right? And actually, I think men's networks do get a lot of backlash. People are nervous. Oh, men getting together. Oh, no, suppose they sort of end up excluding other people and start to hoard power. And, they're already at the top of the organization. So why do we need men's networks? So actually, in order for something like, new men's networks, for example, to start, and that's what I'm thinking of. When I thought about this video, I thought those networks that are going to get challenged if they want to start, how do you sort of like go about getting the support that you need from senior leaders, from HR, etc. So that's kind of what I wanted to start with. So where I'm going to start is it's really ideal if you can get buy-in from senior leaders or from even just like one key senior leader. That is going to actually do sort of like 80% of the work for you. Because even if you don't have support from whether it be like the people team or HR or D&I, they may be like, that's not the model, we don't think we need it, etc. But if you sort of feel, do you know what, there's some real benefit in getting together with like similar colleagues, I really want to start this thing. If you can get a senior leader on board, then that is 80% of the battle. And so how do you do that? So there's something about, can you speak the language of that particular senior leader, and can you articulate or can you explain, just to put it in plain English, why this network would be good for the business? And I don't just mean like in terms of profit. I mean for the business in terms of for colleagues, why it would make it a better place to work. And then obviously that then benefits the business as well, right? But even, the benefits may not all be internal. The benefits may be this is going to look great for us as a brand. And then when we go to recruit, we can say we've got these brilliant networks, etc., whatever it be. But you've got to be able to put it into the language that kind of works for a senior leader if you want to get their buy-in. So senior leaders do typically talk about things like, profit and brand and unique selling proposition and, strategic objectives and specific goals and sustainability, whatever it is. And whichever senior leader you're picking, kind of just like figure out what is important to them and be able to sell the network in a way that kind of like aligns with their goals and sort of, be able to say, if we had a network, it would be able to line up with this particular business goal in this way, or it would support this particular objective in that way, right? So that's the first thing. You need to kind of be able to speak the language of the senior leaders that you want to get on board. Once you've obviously got a senior leader on board, and it's interesting. Yes, I have done it this way. Then I would say, then you go to your people team and or DI team, and sort of say, I'm thinking about this. Don't march in and say, I've already spoken to such and such in the C-suite, and they think this is a great idea. But just sort of say, I've been thinking about this particular network. I've mentioned it to, such and such senior leader, and we've talked about how it potentially supports X, Y, and Z business objective. And, they maybe had some ideas about it. What do you think? Right. So this is now you speaking to the HR. If you've already got this senior leader on board, the HR person's not going to say no. Right. They're not going to say no. And they're now going to hopefully add now their feedback or their input as to how this network can work and how it can be structured. So that's kind of your order. You get your senior leader lined up first. You're floating it as a potential idea. You're selling it into them in terms of how you think it could work. You're probably getting their feedback as well. And then you're taking it into HR and saying, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Right. And so that's a really good sort of like starting point. The other thing that I would add as well, when you're sort of like building that case, is have the data if it's available. This data often isn't readily available, but if some of the data is available, have the data in terms of, sometimes you can just like look around the organization, especially with certain identity or groups, and sometimes things are visible, right? So for example, if you're in an organization and you're looking to start, for example, a network for colleagues with disabilities, specifically physical disabilities, actually, I'm just going to differentiate that for a specific reason. Often you can look around the organization and see that representation isn't there, right? Or, from experience, maybe one or two individuals have told you that when they have made requests for reasonable adjustments, they've had significant pushback. So even just those little anecdotes are data points that you can use as part of making your pitch for why this network is needed. So think about those data points. Think about things like how different perspectives or different thinking brought to the organization can help solve problems for different types of customers, especially if you're a B2C brand. If you're a B2C brand, this is a real, this is almost like a no-brainer. This is part of the business case for diversity. And so by elevating the lived experience of specific different groups, you're actually potentially enabling the organization, the company, the business that you're in to actually crystallize those opportunities to tap into diversity, right? Because otherwise, how are you going to do it? So, being able to explain those elements in terms of like how your network could potentially surface different perspectives can be useful as well. And then, the other one that I mentioned, reputation. So how networks enhance employer brand. You only need to go onto some other organization's website. I want to think, say an organization like, for example, Netflix or I was going to say Google, but I think they maybe have changed it recently on their website. But there are some big companies with great cultures where they really make a song and dance about their networks on their pages, on their careers and abouts pages, because they see it potentially as something that is attractive to potential talent, potential recruits, candidates, etc. So that really is, potentially another reason why your network is a good idea. So this is part of like your pitch for why the network is a good idea. You do need to figure out whether you've got anybody that is against the network, and sometimes that may just come out in some of the conversations that you're having, but sometimes what you might find is you get a certain way down the road and then all of a sudden somebody's trying to put the brakes on, and that can come from anywhere. It could come from within that senior leadership team. It could even potentially come from within HR, right? If they feel that they are being cut out of the loop or they feel that the network's not right. So it's really the best strategy is to figure out where that opposition is coming and tackle it head on. Right, I'm just gonna, like, don't think that if you avoid it, it's just gonna go away. Tackle it head on and have an upfront conversation with that individual. Try to understand what their concerns are and try to take it as feedback to actually make the network better. So if you need to potentially change the network's objectives or the focus or the name, which is something that I talked about in the last video, have that conversation with them, but don't ignore it. If it gets to the point where, you've had the conversation, you think actually this person isn't really acting in good faith and they're just being obstructive, then that's where you can call on the senior leader that you spoke to right up front. And you can kind of go back to them and say, look, we've got this particular issue where XYZ group or team or department or person, thinks the network isn't a good idea because of this. Can you help me deal with it? How do we deal with it? And that's what the senior leader is really useful for. So once you've basically got that blessing from those few key stakeholders, then you start to think about building out your team. And so I did a video about that. So then you'll probably want to go and watch that video, because that's where you want to start to gather the 1 or 2 people around you that are going to actually bring this thing to life. And that is it. I hope that was useful. If you've been thinking about starting a network, start building that pitch, start looking for the data, start identifying who that senior leader is that might be your first champion to help you get it off the ground. All right, that's it. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please subscribe. Please give it a thumbs up and please share it, maybe with your new co-chair or the person that's going to help you get this new network off the ground. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.